Guys, so today we're going to be looking at the passage number 2 from the April 2017 QAS test, and we're just going to go through it right now and kind of give a little breakdown of what's going on, point out some of the interesting things that happen within it, just to set us up so we can go ahead and answer the questions. So let's start here. So first thing we should look at is maybe this title here, Mind-Wise, How We Understand What Others Think, Believe, Feel, and Want. I don't think this is too descriptive for what we're dealing with here, so it may not be that helpful. So I think we should continue looking. Let's see what else we have. So we start off in the first paragraph here with this opening sentence. Knowing your reputation can be surprisingly difficult. Consider, for instance, a study that analyzed a set of published experiments, etc. In these experiments, they did this. And then what we should notice is that basically from this line all the way down to maybe here, we're talking specifically about these experiments here that are mentioned. Right? It continues. The groups varied in familiarity. If people knew exactly what they were thinking, it would be this. So right here is where we get a little analysis of just a little basic statistics, right? Statistically speaking, you measure relationships like these with a correlation. So this is kind of just telling us how the data is going to be measured, right, using the statistics. So we end with that. So that really this first paragraph just opens with this claim that it's hard to know your own reputation. Like it's hard to know how other people feel about you. And then it continues from there by basically explaining the experiment that would show this. And then it ends with a little bit of statistical information. So then we get down here, and here's where we're getting into the results of the experiment. First it says the good news for this whole paragraph here. These experiments suggested that people are pretty good overall at guessing how a group of others would evaluate them. So this whole paragraph right here is basically, here's the good news. We're good at understanding how a group of people know about us. And then it just continues to explain that, right? Here's the correlation that we have. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Right? So that's this paragraph here. Then we get here, now the bad news, right? So let's see what the bad news is. These experiments also assessed how well people could predict the impression of any single individual within a given group. We want to make sure we understand that distinction. It's a difference between knowing just on average that your 10 friends think that you're pretty funny, but not really knowing how each one of those individual friends, how much they think that you're funny. And then we continue down here, and it basically explains, continues to explain the question, and here we get the results, right? It says they were barely better than random guessing, right? So we don't really know how individual people feel about us, even if we feel like we're well acquainted with them, and even if we know how on average the group feels about us. So then we get this question here, maybe we're just holding ourselves to too high a standard. That's what this question means, right? It's hard to define traits like intelligence and trustworthiness. So it kind of lowers the stakes and says, what about predicting something simpler, such as how much other people like you, right? So maybe what the passage is saying is when you're measuring traits like trustworthiness or intelligence or whatever, these are harder traits to measure, right? People have their private definitions of these words. So maybe we need to do something that's a little easier, just like, do you like so-and-so? Or can we predict whether so-and-so likes me? So that's what they set up here, right? In the end with these little rhetorical questions here. Like, surely you're able to do this, right? Yes? And then we get down here, I'm afraid not. These studies found that people are only slightly better than chance at guessing who in a group likes them and who does not. So even when we lower the stakes and are just talking about who likes us and who doesn't, even then we're pretty unclear about, we still don't really know with perfect accuracy who likes us and who doesn't. So then we continue down here, and we just have some concluding thoughts, which are not too, I don't think any other major claims are made there. So really the passage is pretty simple. It opens up by saying it's hard to know your reputation. It talks about the experiments and the design of the experiments that prove this. It gives us a little statistical information. It tells us the good news, which is that we're good on average to understanding how groups feel about us. Then we have 2 paragraphs where it sort of talks about the bad news, which we're not that good at understanding how individuals within a group feel about us. Then it lowers the stakes and said, what about if we just measure, do people like us or not? And here, even then, we're not good at understanding how individuals feel about us. And that's pretty much all the way down to the conclusion. So that's the basic passage outline, and now we will jump into the questions and start solving.